Well, good morning and welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder. This is BRN AM for Friday, December 27th, 2019. And here are our top stories. We're once again looking at 403B plans, this time focusing on teachers. Are high fees and costly endorsement deals derailing teachers' pensions? Welcome back, everyone, and hope you had a wonderful holiday. Earlier in the fall, we introduced everyone to 403B plans. They're very similar in nature to 401k plans, but for the not-for-profit and governmental sectors. Joining us now to discuss recent investigative work that she and her colleagues have done, Ann Tergeson, staff reporter, retirement reporter for the Wall Street Journal. Ann, thanks so much for joining us back on the program again this morning.
Oh, thanks. You too.
Good to see you. So I know you've been doing a lot of writing and a big focus on looking at teacher retirement plans. And you wrote a couple of pieces that we're going to talk about today. What can you tell us? What have you uncovered with your writing?
Oh, boy. Well, I've been working with a colleague, Gretchen Morgensen, for months now, looking at teacher retirement plans, also looking at some of the smaller 457 plans for government workers. And we have two articles. The first one focuses on the role of third-party administrators. Since 2009, third-party administrators have become, more prevalent in the market and have kind of bigger gatekeeping jobs. And so we're looking at conflicts of interest that affect third-party administrators' willingness to, sort of recommend and push certain products, in particular, high-fee products through some of the preferred platforms that are offered in that market. And then the second article is about endorsement payments that some of the unions, like teachers unions and municipal organizations, National Association of Counties, that type of organization, that they receive endorsement payments from specific providers in the 403B and 457 markets in return for their endorsements, recommendations.
Right. So let's go. I want to handle the first article in the first segment, and then we'll come back to endorsements and whatnot, because I think they're two separate but very important, distinct issues. So let's talk about the TPA, and let's lay it out very clearly for the audience, because our audience is a very diverse set of people. So, when we're talking about a third-party administrator, their job is really to reconcile contributions coming into the plan and to send it to the various investment managers in the program. So they have a very important role here, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And,
right.
And so what you have uncovered with your colleagues is that there may not be that wall of delineation in terms of the types of investment options that may be available to plan participants.
Right. So, often 403B plans, just focusing on those, they have a lot of investment options. And so, you maybe as a participant, a teacher, you kind of see a ton of options and you think, great. I've spoken to a number of teachers who think, great, it's like a 401k plan. My employer has probably vetted these options. But in fact, because of the nature of a lot of non-ERISA 403B plans, there isn't a lot of vetting that goes on, that third-party administrators are often given that type of role to serve as sort of a gatekeeper in terms of what investment options are offered. There are situations in which third-party administrators can receive, in some cases, like higher compensation for recommending certain providers or products, or in other cases, it's not necessarily that they receive higher compensation, but they'll sort of curate preferred lists that include only providers willing to pick up certain fees, like administrative fees.
Right.
So that way the school districts don't have to pay those fees, or the teachers don't have to pay them. And so I think from the perspective of a school district, it looks like a great deal. Here's this sort of free 403B account, but what's not maybe apparent to people who aren't familiar with the investing world is that a lot of the providers, almost all of them on that, those types of platforms tend to be higher cost products because obviously they're making up this for this free administrative service through fees that they're charging to the participants. So it's just looking at those types of practices.
Yeah, and so, we just to kind of peel back the onion a little bit more, and having served in that space for quite some time myself, transparency, obviously it's a big focus of the Department of Labor and Internal Revenue Service and other organizations with the federal government. Very important for people to understand the costs associated with the retirement plan. And though it's not illegal to pay for administrative fees with using investment products, but certainly something that you want to be aware of when you're selecting a TPA, when you're selecting an investment product, you want to be aware of what you're paying. Because to answer your point, there is absolutely no free lunch. I'm going to quote Milton Friedman here. There's no free lunch when it comes to administration, record keeping, and doing those things. They have costs associated with them, and someone has to pay for them, usually either the school district or the participant. And in this case, where you're describing the participant, the teacher, the school administrator, that individual is actually paying the freight for these things.
Right, and it's not apparent because this is sort of marketed as a plan with no, where the administrative costs are zero. Yes, they're zero to the school district or in fact to the teacher, but they're really bundled inside those fees, like you just said, that the teachers are paying. And, it's just, I think it's just unfortunate because, a teacher who's saddled with like a high cost plan, say 1.5%, 2%, or more a year, they might be a lot better off just paying a separate administrative fee and having access to low cost, mutual funds, the way that people in the 401k market increasingly do. So
I would agree with you. And I mean, I think people need to be aware of the costs associated with a retirement plan. They need to look at the fees. And the people that are managing, there may not be quote unquote fiduciary responsibilities, although that does vary, as you know. I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but state to state. So there are no federal fiduciary responsibilities for public plans, but there are some state level fiduciary rules that would apply. And those people who are responsible for the plan, whether it's a CFO of a school district, whether it's the school administrator, whether it's a board, there's whatever entity it is, there is some responsibility to vet and understand the fees and also to vet and understand the products that are in these plans. And in reading your piece, your colleague's piece, this is something that the Securities and Exchange Commission and other entities are looking at the federal level. What can you tell us there? How's that going?
Yeah, I meant to point that out. So my colleague and I also wrote an article about that. I think the SEC has been looking into third-party administrative arrangements and, looking at trying to look at the interrelationships between third-party administrators and providers, whether it's, and whether there might be sort of ownership in common that isn't so apparent, maybe. So I think they're looking at a number of things, including, the payments that third-party administrators receive, and possible actual kind of formal ownership relationships between the third-party administrators and other entities, providers in the 403B market. So I can't tell you a lot of the specifics, but I know they are looking carefully at that.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously it's something that takes time to get to the bottom of. It's not something that you just whip around and come up with a report. I would suspect that would take some time. And then just to kind of, I probably should have said this at the beginning, but the 403B world was reformed back in 2009. We had the beginning, the IRS took a look at these rules and put some constraints around how these plans were run. And I think there have been cases where things have improved. I mean, this is not, I don't think we want to paint the picture that this is just an unregulated, unfettered segment of the retirement industry. But it even though it has been improved through these regs, it sounds to me, based on your writing and based on my own knowledge, that this is something that needs to continue to evolve over time.
Yeah, I mean, I actually looked up a whole bunch of different 403B plan, menus in this area, because I spoke to a lot of teachers in Westchester County and Long Island. And in the course of doing so, I looked up my own high school, my own school district that I grew up in's plan, and it's horrifying, really horrifying. And this is a district in Westchester County where I don't know what the average income in this town is, but it's high. So, I mean, the idea that the school district can't afford to somehow figure out a way to pay their own administrative fees, and they're going to rely on a menu where the third-party administrator says the administrative fees are free because they're being picked up by the providers, and you're getting this list of very high-cost providers in turn, and it's sort of inexcusable. So I agree with you. There have been changes, and I think things probably have improved, but the bottom line for a lot of teachers is that they still don't have very compelling investment options.
Yeah, and I think your point is well taken. And fees do have a negative impact on what you're going to have at retirement, especially when more and more people are, the pensions are still there for many teachers, but for newer teachers, they may not have as rich a pension as some of the more legacy teachers. And so that 403B plan or the governmental 457 plan take on more importance for those individuals. So this is obviously something that needs a lot of scrutiny, a lot of review, both by governmental entities, but also by these trustees and people that have responsibility to maintain and evaluate these plans. And I want to take a break, but when we come back, we're going to talk about the other article that Ann just wrote with her colleagues, and that is looking at endorsements. So stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms, especially for the smaller businesses? I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network. Well, thanks for sticking around this morning. We're talking to Ann Tergeson of the Wall Street Journal. Ann, thanks so much for you sticking around this morning.
Oh, you're welcome.
Well, it's always great talking about retirement, and I know you have a passion. Having known you over the years, you have a real passion for writing, but also passionate for helping people understand about retirement issues. So the next article that you and colleagues wrote about was endorsements. So why don't you break it down for us? What did you find, and give us a lay of the land there?
Okay. Well, I think this started for me as I stumbled across something in the 457 market. And since I focused on 401ks historically, 457, I've been aware that exists, but I don't know a lot about that market or the 403B market. So this was months ago, and I stumbled across these endorsement payments that Nationwide makes to a couple different associations that represent local governments, Counties Association, the Mayor's Association, firefighters, a firefighters union. So Nationwide pays, for example, the National Association of Counties over $4.5 million a year in return for the organization's endorsement of nationwide 457 plans. And I just thought, wow, I haven't seen anything like this in the 401k realm. And then we sort of dove into the 403b end of it, and it turns out that a lot of teachers unions have similar arrangements, both on a national level. The National Education Association has, people might be aware of this one because it's actually fairly transparent, an endorsement deal with security benefit, by which an affiliate of a for-profit affiliate of the union gets paid $3.5 million a year in return for that endorsement. A lot of state unions also have endorsement deals with specific providers for various amounts of money. I've even heard of examples on a local level, and by local I mean things like Clark County in Las Vegas. It's just sort of large local areas. I mean, there may be things on a very local basis too. I'm not directly aware of anything specific other than the, please come to the local pub and meet your local AXA guy kind of thing. But yeah.
Well, so again, going back to what we talked about in the first segment, there is no free lunch. So it could be that an association did the due diligence, right? They did the due diligence. They evaluated the provider, in the case of Nationwide or AXA or whomever it is, and selected that provider and said, we're going to get a better deal as a result of that. But that comes at a cost. And so that $4.5 million that you were referencing before, that whatever that number is, that is what I would call, that actually gets baked into the administrative cost of the record keeper. So in the case of Nationwide or others, that is a cost of doing business, right? So it may not be, in the case of the NEA, it may be a little bit more transparent with their relationship with security benefit. And again, no one's saying that this is illegal. What we're saying is that there's a cost to doing this, or what you're saying, and others are saying, and there's a cost to do this, and that cost is ultimately borne by the participant.
Yeah, and to your point, you made a lot of good points. The National Association of Counties, for example, they said it's kind of good that we offer this because this is something that even really small counties with just a handful of employees can get access to this plan, and it's going to be for them more cost effective than if they went out into the market on their own. And I understand that point, but it is one of those sort of potentially one size fits all solutions that maybe, like you said, there is some extra margin built in. There has to be, right, to recoup that endorsement payment somewhere. One of the people I interviewed who works for a county clerk's office, courts, said, ultimately the employees are paying for these endorsements. That was his perspective. But
that's true. I mean, that's just the bottom line. I mean, that is baked into, as I said, the cost of doing business. And again, having a lot of experience personally, professionally doing this type of work, I can tell you that, these are things that get baked in and amortized in to the cost of the record keeping. And it's important for people to understand that, acknowledge it. And these are things that are negotiated. So in the case of like NEA or National Association of Counties or U.S. Conference of Mayors, they're ongoing negotiating those deals. And Ann, I would say that there is some synergy or similarity, I should say. I'm not a good English speaker. Similarity to multiple employer plans that we're looking at in 401k plans, right? That economies of scale gives smaller employers, just like it would give smaller counties the opportunity. But again, it comes down to cost, governance, and all the other issues related to that.
Right. Well, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I assume, I think that your point that they vetted these products is, and these products and providers is certainly an accurate one. However, they all tend to be fairly high cost products. So, within the NEA suite of product offerings under the NEA retirement program, Security Benefit offers everything from a direct mutual fund platform to annuities, and it also offers a platform of advisor-sold mutual funds. The assets in the direct platform are very low, and a lot of teachers who are aware that exists have had, in some cases, quite a runaround in getting enrolled in that product. And I'm not saying that's anything intentional on the part of the NEA or Security Benefit, but that's what these teachers on the ground, a lot of them are telling me.
Yeah. So back to what we were talking about before, obviously there's a lot more reform, a lot more disclosure that needs to happen to improve these products. And again, no one here is charging anyone with a crime. We'll leave that to the people that are doing that. But I think, uncovering and explaining to people what's available, what are the costs associated with doing that, what are the products that you have access to, do you want mutual funds, do you want annuities or variable annuities? Both have places inside and outside of a retirement plan. So that is true as well. But I think the other takeaway here is that the need for a third party to evaluate, an advisor, someone who's independent, to evaluate these products ongoing, to help these entities ensure that the pricing is in line, that people are getting charged appropriately, and the investments are appropriate. That seems to me very essential here.
I can't speak. I think you probably can speak to that issue a lot better, having had more experience in sort of the inside of negotiations between employers and providers. But it certainly seems to me like this is an area that's ripe for the kind of disruption that we've seen in 401k and also in the retail market, in terms of low-cost providers like BlackRock or Vanguard or State Street or whatever, gaining a lot of market share. It's kind of astounding when you look in the 403b market in particular. You just don't see a lot of those kinds of names. I mean, occasionally you'll see a Fidelity or Vanguard, but not often. Yeah,
and you have multiple providers, which we do not have in the 401k or even in the larger governmental 457 space. So, and I think that could be a real good New Year's resolution, since we're coming up on New Year's, for many of those plan sponsors to say, hey, one of the things we're going to do is evaluate our plan more closely. We're going to explain it better to participants, to individuals, about what they have, and we're going to look to shore up our benefits in 2020 and beyond. And always a pleasure talking to you. Great work as always in getting to the gist of and the nuts and bolts of what's going on, and kind of uncovering that. And wishing you and your family a very happy New Year, happy holidays, and we'll talk to you again in 2020. It's hard to believe.
Unbelievable. Yes. Well, thank you very much, and happy holidays to you too.
Thank you. And folks, that wraps up this episode of BRN AM, but we're not done for the week, because tomorrow we've got BRN Weekly, our look back and retrospective show. Hey, don't forget, for all the news in retirement markets, technology, personal finance, so much more, check out today's edition of the Morning Pulse. So until tomorrow, I'm Jeff Snyder. Keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
Waiting here for you to take and drink of. But if you're tired of the same